The heavy metal doors of the prison chamber slid open with a low mechanical hiss. Cold, artificial light spilled into the dark room, casting long shadows over the walls. A lone figure stood at the entrance, a tall human clad in a dark military uniform, his boots clicking against the steel floor as he stepped inside. Captain Elias Voss had seen many things in his years of service. He had fought in wars, survived ambushes, and walked through battlefields where the air smelled of fire and death. But even he had to admit, this was different. In the center of the room sat Princess Zyra of the HFY Dominion. Her presence alone could shake the galaxy. She was chained to a reinforced chair, her arms bound by glowing restraints designed to suppress her powers. Even so, the air around her crackled with unseen energy, like a storm waiting to be unleashed. Her silver hair flowed down her shoulders, and her violet eyes, eyes that had struck fear into entire civilizations, stared directly at him. "No one looks into my eyes and lives," she said, her voice soft but sharp, like a dagger hidden in silk. Elias didn't flinch. Instead, he crossed his arms and smirked. "Well, I'm not no one. I'm human." Zyra tilted her head slightly, her gaze studying him. "A foolish species. You do not understand the power I hold." "That's funny," Elias said, stepping closer, "because from where I'm standing, you're the one in chains." For a moment, silence stretched between them. The sound of distant engines rumbled through the ship's walls, a constant reminder that they were in the heart of the Orion sector, far from friendly space. Zyra's expression did not change, but something flickered in her eyes, curiosity. Elias wasn't like the others. Every other species feared her. The moment she entered a room, people averted their eyes, trembling in her presence. They whispered stories about her, calling her a monster, a destroyer, a living weapon. But this human, he stood there, calm, unimpressed, and completely unafraid. That was new. Elias took another step forward, stopping just outside the reach of her restraints. "You're supposed to be the most dangerous being in the galaxy, aren't you?" Zyra's lips curled into the ghost of a smile. "I am." And yet, he gestured around the room. "Here you are, locked away, guarded like some wild beast. What happened, princess? Did you finally meet someone stronger?" Her smile vanished. "Do not mistake my capture for defeat, human." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Then why are you here?" For the first time, Zyra hesitated. The official story was simple. She had been captured by the Galactic Alliance after a long and brutal war. They called her a conqueror, a tyrant who had burned worlds and crushed fleets. The Alliance claimed that keeping her alive was a mercy, that executing her would only turn her into a martyr. But Zyra knew the truth. She hadn't been captured in battle. She had been betrayed. The Ashkar High Council, the rulers of her own people, had feared her power. They had sacrificed her to keep the peace, handing her over to their enemies like a bargaining chip. Now, the entire galaxy debated what to do with her. The Tivarn warlords demanded her execution. The Vril Syndicate wanted her as a weapon. Even her own people had abandoned her. Only the humans had remained, unpredictable. And now, this human, this Elias Voss, stood before her, watching her like she was a puzzle he intended to solve. Zyra's eyes narrowed. "Tell me, Captain, do you think I deserve to die?" Elias shrugged. "I don't know you well enough to answer that." She leaned forward, her restraints buzzing with energy. "Then why are you here?" "Because I was sent to decide what happens next," Elias said. His tone was casual, but his eyes were sharp. "The Alliance wants you dead. Your people won't save you. But me." He smirked again. "I think you're more useful alive." Sarah chuckled, a low and dangerous sound. "So you wish to use me like a tool, just like everyone else?" "Not exactly," Elias replied. "I want to know the truth." She frowned. "The truth?" "Yeah, the truth about you, about why the whole galaxy fears you, about what you really are." Zyra's expression became unreadable. Elias had expected anger, maybe even a threat. But instead, she looked thoughtful. For the first time in her life, someone had asked. Not assumed, not judged, not feared. Asked. Zira met his gaze once more. The chains around her wrists hummed, the glow reflecting in her violet eyes. "The truth, Captain," she whispered. "Are you sure you're ready for it?" Elias held her gaze. "Try me." And for the first time since her capture, Princess Syra smiled. The prison chamber was silent except for the soft hum of the energy restraints. Captain Elias Voss stood with his arms crossed, watching Princess Syra of the Ashgar Dominion. She was still bound to the chair, but she no longer looked like a prisoner. She looked like a queen in chains. Elias had seen powerful leaders before, commanders, admirals, even warlords, but none had the presence she had. There was something in her violet eyes that made the air feel heavier, like standing in the calm before a storm. Zyra tilted her head, watching him with the same curiosity he had shown her. "You are different from the others, Captain." Elias smirked. "I hear that a lot." Her lips curled slightly, almost amused. "Do you not fear me? I've faced worse." "Is that so?" she said softly. "Then tell me, human, have you ever seen a star collapse?" Elias frowned. "No, I have." Zyra's voice was calm, but there was something cold beneath it. "I stood on the bridge of a warship and watched as a planet burned. I felt its people scream in terror before silence took them. I have walked through the ruins of worlds and heard the echoes of their last words." She leaned forward, her glowing restraints buzzing as they resisted her movement. "Do you truly think you have seen worse than me?" Elias met her gaze without hesitation. "I don't judge people by what others say about them. I judge them by what I see." Zara stared at him for a long moment. Then she leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. "You are either a fool," she said, "or something far more dangerous." Elias shrugged. "I prefer determined." Zyra chuckled, a sound like distant thunder. But before either of them could speak again, the ship suddenly shook violently. The lights flickered, and an alarm blared through the halls. Elias's comlink crackled to life. "Captain, we have incoming." Unknown warships just exited hyperspace. No warning, no signals. "They're charging weapons." Elias turned sharply, his instincts going into battle mode. "Who is it?" "Not sure yet, sir, but they're headed straight for us." Elias glanced at Tyra. She was watching him closely. "Looks like someone doesn't want you alive, Princess," he said. She smirked. "That would be a long list, Captain." Elias had no time to waste. He pulled out his sidearm, quickly unlocking the console on the wall. His men would call him reckless. But he wasn't stupid. If someone was coming to kill her, she needed to be free to fight back. With a few quick commands, the energy restraints flickered, then vanished. Gazira exhaled softly as the chains unlocked. She rose to her feet, stretching her arms. The air around her shimmered with a strange, unseen force. For the first time, Elias saw her true power. She looked at him, violet eyes glowing faintly. "Do you trust me, human?" Elias checked his weapon and smirked. "Nope. But I trust that you don't want to die today." Zyra smiled. "Then let's make them regret coming here." The battle begins. The ship trembled again, as explosions rocked the outer hull. Elias ran through the corridors with Syra close behind, his soldiers falling into formation as they reached the control deck. "Status," Elias barked. A lieutenant saluted. "Sir, 4 enemy warships, design unknown. They're jamming our comms. Shields are holding, but not for long." Elias turned to Syra. "Any idea who they are?" She studied the tactical screen for a moment, then nodded. "Tivarn warships, assassin class. They were built for one purpose, to eliminate threats before they become unstoppable." Elias raised an eyebrow. "That includes you, I'm guessing." Tyra smirked. "Obviously. Another explosion shook the ship, and the shield meters dropped to 43%. Elias clenched his jaw. They were running out of time. Then Syra stepped forward, placing a hand on the console. "Give me access to your systems." The crew hesitated. One of the officers whispered, "Sir, we can't." "Do it," Elias ordered. Zyra's fingers danced over the console, and the ship's energy levels fluctuated wildly. The lights flickered, but then a strange hum filled the air. "What are you doing?" Elias asked. Zyra closed her eyes. The energy around her pulsed, as if the ship itself was breathing. "Your weapons are powerful," she said, "but they are designed for conventional war. I am not." She exhaled, and suddenly, the power output of the ship doubled. The weapons officer gasped. "Captain, our plasma cannons just overcharge. We're pushing 200% output." "That's impossible." Elias grinned. "Not if you have a walking superweapon on board." He turned to his crew. "Target the lead ship. Fire everything." The ship's cannons roared to life. Plasma bolts tore through enemy shields like paper, cutting through the hull of the lead Tivarn warship. Within seconds, it was ripped apart in a fiery explosion. The remaining enemy ships hesitated. They had expected an easy kill. They were wrong. Zyra opened her eyes, glowing with pure energy. She turned to Elias, her expression fierce. "Now you understand, Captain," she said. "The galaxy fears me, because I am what they cannot control." Elias smirked. "Good, because neither can I." The first enemy warship exploded in a ball of fire. The entire battlefield changed in an instant. One moment, the Tivarn assassins had been the hunters. Now, they were the prey. Captain Elias Voss stood on the command deck, gripping the side of the control console as his ship shook from another impact. Sparks rained from overhead panels, and warning alarms screamed across the bridge. "Status report," Elias barked. "One enemy ship destroyed, sir," his weapons officer shouted over the chaos. "But the remaining 3 are regrouping. They're adapting." Elias turned to Princess Syra, who stood beside him, her violet eyes glowing faintly. Even now, with the battle raging outside, she looked calm, powerful, unshaken. "Can you do that energy boost trick again?" Elias asked. Zyra shook her head. "Not without time to recover. Even my power has limits." Elias clicked his tongue. Time was exactly what they didn't have. The enemy ships had stopped attacking directly. Instead, they began maneuvering around the battlefield, trying to box them in. "They're driving us into a trap," Syra said. Elias clenched his jaw. "We need to leave. Now." His lieutenant turned sharply. "Captain, our hyperdrive is damaged. We can't jump to hyperspace." Elias ran a hand through his short-cropped hair. "Great. 3 enemy warships. No way to run. No backup." Then he felt Syra's gaze on him. "You have a plan, don't you?" she asked. Elias smirked. "Of course. Just don't expect it to be a smart plan." Syra arched an eyebrow. "Do humans ever fight with logic?" "Not really." "It's what makes us unpredictable," Elias said. "And unpredictability wins wars." The gamble. Elias turned to his crew. "Divert all power to the forward shields. Set the engines to full burn." His lieutenant hesitated. "Sir, that will take power from our weapons." "Good. We're not fighting. We're running through them." Murmurs of confusion spread through the bridge, charging at the enemy. With no weapons, it was suicide. But Syra smiled. She understood. "Ah," she said, stepping forward. "We let them believe they have won." Elias nodded. "Exactly." The enemy warships were still repositioning, their weapons focused on cutting off escape routes. They expected the humans to fight or surrender. They did not expect a direct charge. "Engines to max," Elias shouted. "Full speed ahead." The ship lurched forward, its thrusters burning white-hot. The enemy warships, realizing something was wrong, immediately opened fire, but it was too late. The forward shields absorbed the first wave of attacks, and before the Tivarn ships could react, Elias's ship smashed through their formation, passing between them at blinding speed. Now, Elias roared. Zyra raised her hand, and the air around her shimmered. At that moment, the ship's external lights flashed in a strange sequence, a trick using leftover energy from the failed hyperdrive, a false energy signal. To the enemy sensors, it looked like a hyperspace jump. The Tivarn ships hesitated. They thought their target had escaped. It was only a few seconds of confusion. But a few seconds was all they needed. Full burn away from the battlefield, Elias commanded. The engines roared, and the ship disappeared into the darkness of space. The trap had failed. The hunters had lost. They were free. Aftermath. The bridge crew erupted into cheers, but Elias exhaled slowly, keeping his focus on the star map. "Are they following?" he asked. The radar officer checked the readings. "Negative, sir. They're scanning for us, but they think we jumped to hyperspace. We have at least an hour before they realize we're still in real space." Elias leaned against the control panel. "Good. Let's use it wisely." The crew hurried to make repairs. The hyperdrive was still offline, and the shields were weakened, but they were alive, which, considering the odds, was a victory. Elias turned to Zyra. She had been silent, watching the crew with an unreadable expression. "You all right, princess?" he asked. She blinked, as if pulled from deep thought. "Yes. I was merely observing." "Observing what?" Zyra's gaze swept across the humans working together, fixing wires, assisting the wounded, supporting each other without hesitation. She had fought in wars, commanded fleets, and witnessed the rise and fall of empires. But this was different. "Your people," she said, "they are not like the others." Elias crossed his arms. "Let me guess, because we don't fear you." Zyra shook her head. "No, because you do not break." Elias chuckled. "Oh, we break. We just put ourselves back together and keep going." Zyra studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Perhaps that is why the galaxy underestimates you." Elias shrugged. "I prefer it that way. Makes winning easier." Zyra smirked. "You are an interesting species, Captain." Elias smirked back. "And you're not as terrifying as they say, princess." She laughed softly, but there was something in her eyes, something dangerous. "Oh, Captain," she whispered, "you have not seen me at full power yet." Elias's grin faded slightly. Somehow he believed her. The ship drifted in the cold silence of space, damaged but alive. Captain Elias Voss stood at the command deck, staring at the holographic map. The Tivarn warships had fallen for their trick, but it wouldn't last forever. "Hyperdrive repairs?" he asked. His engineer, Lieutenant Carson, wiped sweat from his forehead. "We patched what we could, but it's still unstable. We need a full system reset before jumping again." Elias sighed. That meant they were still vulnerable. He glanced at Princess Zyra. She stood near the viewport, gazing at the stars with an unreadable expression. Even now, after battle and escape, she looked calm and composed. But Elias wasn't fooled. He had seen her power, felt it. She wasn't just a warrior. She was something more. "You're thinking too loudly, Captain," Zyra said without looking at him. Elias smirked. "Didn't know you could read minds." "I do not need to," she replied. "Your thoughts are written on your face." Elias leaned against the console. "All right then. Tell me, what's next? Are the Tivarn the only ones after you, or do I need to prepare for an entire fleet?" Zyra turned to him, violet eyes glowing faintly. "The Tivarn were merely the first wave. Others will come." "Great," Elias muttered. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You should let me go, Captain. If I am no longer on your ship, the galaxy will forget you." Elias chuckled. "Yes, See, I don't buy that. If I hand you over, someone else takes you prisoner. Or worse. And if I let you leave alone, you get hunted down. Zara tilted her head. Why do you care? Elias shrugged. Call it human stubbornness. Zara stared at him for a moment, then smiled. A small, almost amused smile. Very well, Captain. Then let us prepare for war. Unexpected visitors. Before Elias could respond, the ship's alarms blared again. Captain, we've got incoming. Elias rushed to the radar screen. His stomach dropped. 2 ships were approaching fast. Not Tivarn, the lieutenant confirmed. These ships have Ashkar markings. Elias turned to Xira. Friends of yours? Syra's face was unreadable. No, they are hunters. Elias didn't like that answer. The comms crackled. A deep, commanding voice filled the bridge. This is Commander Zarek of the Ashkar Dominion. Surrender the fugitive, and you will be spared. Elias sighed. Yeah, see, I don't like how that sounds. Zyra's expression hardened. Zarek will not negotiate. He is loyal to the Dominion, but more than that, he is loyal to power. Elias ran a hand through his hair. Another fight. Just great. Then Syra stepped forward. Open the channel, she ordered. Elias hesitated, then nodded to his officer. The screen flickered, revealing Commander Zarek, a towering Ashkar warrior in dark armor, his golden eyes filled with authority. Ah, Princess Syra, Zarek said with a smirk. You look different in chains. I am not in chains anymore, Syra replied smoothly. Zarek's gaze flicked to Elias. And this human, what is he to you? A servant, a fool. Elias folded his arms. Captain Elias Voss, and you're interrupting my day. Zarek chuckled. Captain, do you truly think you can protect her? You do not understand the forces at play. Elias smirked. That's the thing, Zarek. I don't need to understand. I just need to win. Zarek's smile faded. You are making a mistake, human. Elias shrugged. Wouldn't be the first time. Tedera stepped closer. You should leave, Zarek, while you still can. Zarek raised an eyebrow. Or what? Zyra's violet eyes flashed with power. The lights in the bridge flickered, and for a brief moment, the air around her hummed with raw energy. Zarek's face darkened. He understood. You are dangerous, Kyra, he said quietly, but even you cannot fight the entire Dominion. Zyra smiled coldly. Would you like to test that theory? A tense silence filled the air. Then Zarek exhaled and leaned back in his chair. This is not over, he said. The Dominion will not stop hunting you. And your human protector. He will break long before you do. Elias rolled his eyes. Yeah, get in line. The screen went dark. Elias turned to Kyra. So, what exactly was that? Zara exhaled slowly. A warning. You sure? Because it kinda felt like a challenge. Zyra smiled. Perhaps both. New alliances. The ship remained in silence for a while. The Ashkar ships had not attacked. Not yet. Elias sat on the edge of the command console. So what's the real story, Princess? Why is everyone after you? Zyra hesitated. Then, for the first time, she looked uncertain. I am the heir to the Ashkar Dominion, she admitted, but I refuse to take the throne. Elias raised an eyebrow. Why? Zyra's expression hardened. Because the throne is built on fear, on power without mercy, and I refuse to rule that way. Elias whistled. So they want to replace you. Zyra nodded. Zarek is not my only enemy. There are many who believe I am weak, because I do not wish to conquer. They will hunt me until I either die or give in. Elias studied her. For the first time, he saw not just a powerful warrior, but someone trapped by the weight of expectation. He sighed. Well, that's a mess. Zyra smirked. Indeed. Elias stood up. All right, princess. Here's the deal. If we're gonna survive, we fight together. No secrets. No half-truths. Agreed. Zara studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she extended her hand. Agreed. Elias shook it. And just like that, a dangerous alliance was born. The stars stretched endlessly before them, cold and distant, silent watchers of a growing storm. Captain Elias Voss sat at the command deck, deep in thought. Their enemies were not just the Tivarn anymore. Now, the Ashkar Dominion was after them too. And unlike the Tivarn assassins, the Ashkar had fleets, armies, and endless resources. Elias glanced at Princess Xyra, who stood near the viewport. Her violet eyes were lost in the void of space, but her mind was elsewhere. He knew that look. She was thinking about what came next. "You're too quiet," Elias finally said. Xyra turned slightly. "I was thinking." About. She hesitated before answering. "Commander Zarek will not stop. He will return with greater force, and next time, we may not escape so easily." Elias leaned back in his chair. "Yeah, I figured. Any brilliant ideas?" Xyra remained silent. That was answer enough. A hidden message. "Captain, we're receiving an encrypted transmission." Elias snapped to attention. "From who?" His communications officer frowned. "It's bouncing through multiple channels, masking the origin. But it's directed at Princess Xyra." Elias looked at her. "Friends of yours?" Xyra's face was unreadable. "Play it." The screen flickered, and a hologram appeared, a hooded figure, their voice disguised by distortion. "Princess Xyra, you are running out of time. The Dominion's forces are already moving. Zarek will return, and next time, he will not hesitate to destroy you. But there is still hope. Come to the abandoned station in the Xylura system. There, you will find what you need." The message ended. Silence filled the bridge. Elias exhaled. All right. That wasn't ominous at all. His lieutenant frowned. It could be a trap. Xyra crossed her arms, or it could be an opportunity. Elias shook his head. "You seriously want to go? We don't even know who sent that." Xyra turned to him. "We don't have a choice. If we do nothing, Zarek will find us first. We must take the risk." Elias sighed. "Fine. But if this goes wrong, I'm going to say, 'I told you so.'" Xyra smirked. "Duly noted, Captain." The Xylura station. The station floated like a dead thing in the darkness of the Xylura system. Its metal surface was rusted and broken, with sections torn apart by past battles. A graveyard of old technology. Elias didn't like it. "This place screams bad idea." Xyra ignored him and moved forward. Something about this place called to her. As they stepped inside, their footsteps echoed through the empty halls. Dust covered the control panels. The air was stale, untouched for years. Then a voice broke the silence. "You actually came." Elias whipped around, blaster raised. A figure stepped from the shadows, a woman in dark robes, her silver hair framing a scared face. Xyra's eyes widened. "Vena." The woman smirked. "It has been a long time, Princess." Elias lowered his blaster slightly. "I take it you two know each other." Xyra nodded. "She was once my mentor." Vena folded her arms. "And now I am your only hope." Elias sighed. "Of course you are." The forbidden secret. Vena led them deeper into the station. As they walked, she spoke. "The Dominion fears you, Tyra. Not because of your power, but because of what you represent. You are the hare who refuses to rule. The flame they cannot control." Xyra remained silent. Vena stopped before a massive sealed door. "But there is something they fear even more." She pressed a panel, and the door slowly rumbled open. Inside was a chamber of ancient machines, Strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls. In the center, a floating crystal pulsed with light. Elias frowned. Okay, what am I looking at? Vena gestured to the crystal, the last remnant of the celestial core. Zyra's breath caught. That's a myth. Vena smirked. No, it is very real. And it is the key to your survival. Elias crossed his arms. All right, I'll bite. What does it do? Vena stepped closer to Zyra. The celestial core is a power source unlike any in the galaxy. It can amplify your abilities, make you stronger than Zarek, stronger than the Dominion itself. Zyra stared at the glowing crystal, a war raging behind her eyes. Elias frowned. Hold on. What's the catch? Vena's expression darkened. The core does not simply give power. It changes the one who wields it. Once Zyra takes it, there is no going back. Silence filled the chamber. Zyra's fists clenched. She knew what this meant. She had spent her whole life resisting the kind of rule the Dominion wanted, rule by fear and force. But if she refused this power, they would hunt her forever. Elias stepped beside her. You don't have to do this. Zyra turned to him. Don't I? Elias held her gaze. Power doesn't make a leader, Zyra. You already have everything you need to fight back. She exhaled slowly. And if I fail? Elias smirked. Then we fail together. Zyra looked back at the crystal. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then she turned away. No, she said firmly. I will fight them as I am. Vena studied her, then smiled. Good. I hoped you would say that. Elias blinked. Wait, what? Vena chuckled. The core was never the real test. It was your choice. Zyra shook her head, amused. You haven't changed, Vena. Vena smirked. Come, there is still much to prepare. The next battle will decide everything. Elias sighed. Why does it always have to be a battle? Zyra smiled. Because, Captain, you would be bored otherwise. Elias chuckled. Fair point. They walked away, leaving the celestial core behind. The fight wasn't over. But for the first time, Zyra knew exactly who she was, and that was more powerful than any crystal. The stolen starship drifted in the darkness of space, hidden behind the shadow of a dead moon. Waiting. Watching. Inside, Captain Elias Voss stood at the command deck, arms crossed, staring at the tactical map. Their enemies were closing in. Commander Zarek's fleet was near, and the Dominion was preparing to strike. We can't run forever, Elias muttered. Behind him, Princess Zyra stood, her violet eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. She was calm, but Elias could sense the storm inside her. Vena, the mysterious woman from the Hilara station, leaned against the console. You made the right choice. Ira, she said, rejecting the celestial core. But now, you must prove you can fight without it. Zyra nodded. I do not fear battle, but I will not become the kind of ruler the Dominion wants me to be. Elias smirked. Well, Princess, if you want to fight back, we need a plan. Because right now, we're outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of luck. Vena's expression darkened. Then we stop running. The trap. Captain. Multiple ships incoming. Elias rushed to the radar screen. Zarek had arrived. The massive Ashkar warships glowed with crimson energy, forming an impenetrable wall of firepower. A transmission came through. This is Commander Zarek. Surrender Zyra now, and I may let you live. Elias sighed. Why do bad guys always say that? Zyra stepped forward. Open the channel. Zarek's face appeared on the screen, his golden eyes burning with triumph. So, Princess, have you come to your senses? Are you ready to accept your place? Zyra's expression was cold. My place is not under your rule, Zarek, nor the Dominion's. Zarek chuckled. Then you leave me no choice. The transmission cut. The warships moved into attack formation. Elias turned to Xyra. I hope you have a plan. Xyra smirked. Yes. We let them come. Elias blinked. That's not a plan. But before he could argue further, the ship shook violently as the first wave of enemy fire struck their shields. The battle had begun. Fighting back. Shields at 60%. Carson shouted. Elias gritted his teeth. Return fire. The ship's cannons roared, sending bright blue energy beams toward the enemy fleet. One of Zarek's smaller ships exploded in a burst of flame, but the larger warships kept advancing. We won't last long like this, Elias warned. Zyra's eyes glowed. Then we changed the battlefield. She turned to Vena. Are the disruptors ready? Vena nodded. Yes. If we activate them, Zarek's ships will lose their targeting systems for a short time. Elias grinned. That's more like it. Do it. Vena pressed a button. A pulse of blue energy rippled from their ship, spreading like an invisible wave. Suddenly, the enemy warships shuddered. Their weapons flickered. Their targeting systems went offline. They're blind. Carson cheered. Now's our chance. Elias shouted. Fire everything. Their ship unleashed a storm of energy blasts, cutting through Zarek's disabled fleet. 2 more enemy ships exploded, sending debris into space. For the first time, Zarek's forces were on the defensive. But the victory was short-lived. Zarek strikes back. The enemy flagship remained untouched, and from its center, a dark energy began to gather. Zyra's eyes widened. He's charging the annihilation cannon. Elias frowned. But what now? A weapon powerful enough to destroy entire planets, Vena said grimly. Elias groaned. Of course he has one of those. Zarek's voice echoed through the comms. Enough games. This ends now. The cannon glowed with crimson energy, preparing to fire. Zarek clenched her fists. She could feel the power building. She had a choice. She could stop it, but it meant using her full strength, revealing her true power. Elias saw her hesitation. Zyra, what do we do? She closed her eyes, took a deep breath. Then she stepped forward. Open the airlock, she ordered. Elias blinked. Wait. What? I'm going out there, she said. Elias grabbed her arm. That's insane. Zyra looked at him. Trust me. Elias hesitated. Then, slowly, he let go. Be careful, princess. She nodded. Then she stepped into the airlock. A show of power. The airlock doors slid open, revealing the vast emptiness of space. Zyra floated forward, her body surrounded by a faint aura of violet energy. She reached out toward Zarek's flagship. Inside, Zarek watched in confusion. What is she doing? Then he felt it. The ship shook violently. The power of Cyrus will grip the annihilation cannon, holding it in place. Zarek's officers panicked. Sir, we can't fire. Zarek's eyes burned with fury. Impossible. Outside, Cyrus' aura flared. Energy crackled around her, bending space itself. She had always restrained herself, always held back. But no longer. With a single motion, she twisted her hand, and the entire annihilation cannon shattered into pieces. Zarek's crew screamed as the energy core overloaded. Elias, watching from the ship, stared in awe. Remind me never to make her angry, he muttered. The aftermath. The battle was over. Zarek's fleet retreated, their flagship barely escaping before it collapsed in on itself. Zyra floated back to the ship, her energy fading. As she stepped into the airlock, Elias caught her before she collapsed. You okay? He asked. She nodded weakly. I am. Free. Elias smirked. Yeah, well, don't get too comfortable. We still have the whole Dominion to deal with. Zyra smiled. Let them come. Elias chuckled. You're starting to sound like me. Vena stepped forward. The war isn't over, but today you have proven you are stronger than they ever feared. Zira exhaled. Then we prepare for the final battle. Elias grinned. Now that is a plan I like. Outside, the stars shimmered. The real fight was yet to come. And this time, the galaxy would know the power of a human and a rebel princess. The galaxy stood at the edge of war. The Dominion had suffered a rare defeat, but Commander Zarek had escaped. And now he was returning with the full force of the Ashkar Dominion. Zira, Elias, and their small crew knew one thing. This was it. There was nowhere left to run. No more tricks to play. They had to face the Dominion, and they had to win. The last message. The command deck of the Starseeker was silent as Elias replayed the intercepted message from the Dominion's War Council. Commander Zarek, proceed with the invasion. The rebel princess must be eliminated. Elias exhaled. Well, that sounds bad. Zira stood beside him, her violet eyes glowing softly. Zarek is coming, but this time, we will not hide. Elias gave her a sideways look. Just making sure. Are you planning to charge an entire fleet by yourself again? Zira smirked. Not this time. We fight together. Elias chuckled. Good, because I was starting to feel useless. Vena stepped forward. I have sent messages to the outer colonies. Some may come to our aid, but most fear the Dominion too much. Elias sighed. So it's just us. Zira nodded. Then we make our stand here. The battlefield. They chose their ground carefully. An asteroid field near the planet Velnar 9. The debris would give them cover and limit the Dominion's ability to maneuver. The plan was simple. Lure Zarek in, hit them hard, and survive. Elias stood at the bridge, watching the radar. They were coming. All ships, prepare for battle. The crew scrambled to their positions. Engines roared. Weapons charged. Shields activated. Zira stood at the viewport, calm and focused. This is where we change the future. Elias smirked. No pressure or anything. Then the Dominion arrived. The battle begins. Zarek's fleet emerged from hyperspace, massive warships filling the void. The battle started instantly. Laser cannons lit up the darkness, energy beams clashed, and explosions tore through the asteroid field. Elias maneuvered the Starseeker through the chaos, dodging enemy fire while returning shots. Hold the line, he shouted. Vena's allies, a few rebel ships, fought beside them, but they were outnumbered 5-1. Zarek's voice echoed through the comms. You cannot win, princess. Surrender. Zira's eyes burned. Never. She turned to Elias. Get me to Zarek's flagship. Elias's eyes widened. Oh, come on. Are you serious? Zira smirked. Always. Elias groaned. You're lucky I'm bad at saying no. The Starseeker accelerated, dodging wreckage and enemy fire, heading straight for the Dominion flagship. The final duel. Zira landed inside the Dominion flagship with Elias and a small strike team. Zarek was waiting. He stood at the center of the throne room, his golden armor gleaming. You have defied your destiny long enough, Zira. Zira stepped forward. My destiny is my own. Zarek activated his plasma blade, its red light casting shadows. Then let us end this. Zira charged. Their blades clashed, sending sparks through the air. A battle of skill. A battle of will. Elias and the strike team held off the Dominion guards, blasters firing in every direction. Zira and Zarek fought across the throne room, each strike powerful, each move precise. But Zira was stronger, faster, free. She knocked Zarek's blade aside, pressing forward. Zarek growled. You think you can rule without power, without fear. Zira's eyes flashed with violet energy. I do not need fear. I have hope. With one final strike, she disarmed Zarek, sending his blade flying. He fell to his knees, breathing heavily. Then finish it. Zira lowered her weapon. No, she said. Your time is over. The Dominion's rule ends today. Elias grinned. That means we're blowing up the ship, right? Scifi smirked. Yes. Elias clapped his hands. Finally, a plan I like. The victory. As the Starseeker flew away, the Dominion flagship erupted in flames, a massive explosion lighting up the battlefield. Seeing their leader fall, the Dominion forces panicked. Some fled, others surrendered. The battle was over. Xyra stood on the command deck, watching the burning remains of Zurich's fleet. Elias leaned against the console. So, what now? Xyra exhaled. Now, we rebuild. Vena stepped forward. You have done what no one believed possible, Princess. The Dominion is broken. The galaxy is free. Elias smirked. Yeah. And we're heroes now. I expect free drinks on every planet. Xyra chuckled. We shall see. As the Starseeker flew into the stars, Xyra closed her eyes. She had fought for her freedom, for her people. And now, the future was theirs to shape.